All right. On the toolbar, you'll see the chat icon to the right. You can communicate with us privately or publicly through it by using the drop-down menu for either. This is how you should submit questions for the speakers to us, which we'll take at the end. If you're connected via telephone only, you can text your questions to me at that number on the screen, 914-388-7412, or you could send an email. I'm more likely to see a text. We'll do our best to get in as many questions as possible. As I'm sure you know, things can happen in a webinar, so if you get disconnected for any reason, just log back in. If you notice audio or visual issues on our end, feel free to use the text feature to let me know what you're experiencing. There's a questionnaire at the end of this webinar. Please take a moment to answer it. It'll really help us. To answer the most popular question we usually receive, yes, we will be sending you the slides and the agenda with bios in a follow-up email after the webinar. I'm going to turn it over now to Todd Fabozzi.
Okay, thank you, Pat. So just a quick overview of the agenda for today's webinar. The content of the webinar is to focus on highlighting the Clean Energy Communities Program, which is a program supported by NYSERDA, and the Climate Smart Communities Program, which is in part supported by NYSERDA through the Clean Energy Community Program, but is a Department of Environmental Conservation program. And on the agenda today, we have Carlo Castilla, who's the Regional Clean Energy Communities Program Director from the Hudson Valley Regional Council, and she will be giving an overview of NYSERDA's Clean Energy Communities Program. We have Dazzle Ekblad, who's a Climate Policy Analyst for the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, and she will be giving you an overview of Climate Smart Communities. And then we have Europa McGovern from the Clean Energy Communities. She's a Clean Energy Communities Coordinator from the Hudson Valley Regional Council. And Jim Yanger, who's the Managing Principal from Climate Action Associates. And they will be highlighting an innovative way of approaching the Climate Smart Communities Program. They've developed this through the Clean Energy Communities Program. Sorry for all of the different related names here, but we're going to clarify this today. And they've developed a Climate Action Planning Institute and a means of working with a group of communities to get their emissions from their government operations, and then to dissect those operation inventories and to be able to develop a roadmap for climate action planning. And like I mentioned, are working with a group of communities, and 3 of those communities are going to then speak about their experiences working on the Climate Smart Communities Program. We have Roberto Muller from the town of Phillipstown. We have Mark Varian from the town of Gardner, and we have Julie Noble from the city of Kingston. And then there's the wonderful pictures of everybody. And then I just want to just quickly highlight what the upstate Eastern Territory is, because when we make reference to this territory, which is upstate New York Eastern Territory, most people are not aware of what that is. And what it is a consortium of 4 different regions and a partnership that was formed to apply for the Clean Energy Communities Program. The 4 regions in our territory are the Adirondack North Country, and that region is then, the program is administered in that region through the Adirondack North Country Association. The Mohawk Valley, and that region is, the technical assistance for the program is administered through the Mohawk Valley Economic Development District. The Mid-Hudson region, and that is administered through the Hudson Valley Regional Council, and then the Capital Region, and that is administered through the Capital District Regional Planning Commission, and the whole territory is managed by the Capital District Regional Planning Commission. And then we also have on our team Climate Action Associates, which provides technical support to the team. And we also have Courtney Strong Incorporated, which also provides technical and marketing support to the program. So next up, Carla Castillo. from the Hudson Valley Regional Council. Take it away, Carla.
Thank you so much, Todd. NYSERDA's Clean Energy Communities Program, if you could advance the slide, please, is part of Governor Cuomo's energy strategy to build a clean, resilient, and affordable energy system. Yes, there we are, great. For New York by cutting pollution by 40% and supplying 70% of our electricity from renewable sources by 2030. Next slide, please. The CEC program is comprised of 10 actions that counties and municipalities can undertake to reduce greenhouse gases while generating cost savings for their communities. To become a designated clean energy community, local governments must complete 4 out of 10 high-impact actions. You select the actions that are best suited for your community. Throughout New York State, Clean Energy Communities coordinators are available to assist you with selection of the actions as well as navigating each action submission requirements. CEC coordinators can provide you with technical assistance, resources, and templates that will ease the designation process. And on becoming a designated clean energy community, your local government may be eligible for funding. Your region's CEC coordinator can provide you with information on the funding currently available. Next slide, please. There has been strong interest in the CEC program. 239 local governments statewide have been designated clean energy communities, with many more submitting over 1,400 actions in pursuit of CEC designation. The CEC actions are diverse and allow your communities to focus on your areas of need or interest. Next slide. For example, if you are interested in understanding the energy use and expenditure of your buildings, you would begin with the benchmarking action, which tracks energy use through the EPA's Energy Star Portfolio Manager. Next slide. Understanding how your buildings are performing will position you to identify clean energy upgrades that you can undertake to reduce your municipality's greenhouse gas emissions while reaping cost savings. Such improvements can include retrofitting your internal lights to LEDs, for example. Next slide. The LED streetlights action is an impactful way to reduce lighting costs from conversion of overhead streetlights to energy-efficient LED technology. Whether you choose to purchase your streetlights or convert to LEDs through your existing utility, your municipality will see cost savings. Next slide. If your interest is your inventory of fleets, then you can consider purchasing and deploying one alternative fuel vehicle or installing and making publicly available a charging station under the Clean Fleets action. ZEV Clean Vehicle rebates of up to $5,000 are currently available through July 26, 2019. This screenshot from PlugShares shows just some of the operational charging stations statewide. These are located in the Mid-Hudson region. Next slide. For communities interested in solar, supporting a community-led Solarize campaign enables your constituents to see energy savings through on-site solar installations or by buying into community solar. Next slide. Municipalities can also implement the Unified Solar Permit application and support rooftop and ground-mounted solar in their community by streamlining the approval process for solar installations. Next slide. The Energy Code Enforcement Training Action offers compliance officers a deep dive into the energy portion of the building code, enabling them to help your constituents save energy dollars. These free full-day trainings cover both residential and commercial new construction and rehabs and include 8 hours of Department of State in-service credit. While the upcoming training shown is in the Mid-Hudson, your local CEC coordinator can connect you with an upcoming training in your region. Next slide. The Community Choice Aggregation Action enables your community's residential and small commercial customers to aggregate their purchasing power to buy renewable energy at lower monthly costs. Next slide. For businesses and nonprofits, local governments can support clean energy upgrades by enabling affordable financing through the Energize New York Finance Auction. Next slide. We will now hear from our 6 presenters on the last CEC action, Climate Smart Community Certification. CSC certification extends beyond energy to encompass the full range of actions through which local governments can save money, foster a vibrant economy, improve the environment, and demonstrate clean energy leadership. As Todd mentioned, today's presenters will focus on 2 Climate Smart Communities actions from Pledge Element 2, Greenhouse Gas Emissions Inventories and Climate Action Plans. Climate Policy Analyst Dazzle Ekblad from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation will begin with an overview of Climate Smart Community certification.
Thank you very much, Carla. Hi, everybody. This is Dazzle Ekblad from the DEC's Office of Climate Change. I am experiencing some WebEx issues, so they kicked me off, so I'm just trying to get reconnected now. Oh, wow. That's interesting. It's telling me that I can't join because the WebEx, the event is full. So, Pat, are you there?
Yes, I sure am.
I apologize for that. What I can do is I can present, there's an attendee by the name of Willow Ayers. Can you make her a panelist and or a presenter? Then I can present through another computer that is connected to the webinar.
Sure, I'll try to do that.
Great.
Actually, we want you to try to sign in again. We deleted one of our participants in this room.
Okay, I'll try that. Thanks for your patience, folks. This is part of what happens. Okay. Okay, it's looking good. So, no, it says the event is full. No more people can join the event.
We're logging out other people.
Okay. So I'll try that.
We usually put a very high number on the attendance, like 500. So I think it's another issue.
Okay. Well, I'll keep trying. Okay, this is looking good. It's giving me a different screen than it was before. So folks, I'm gonna kind of keep talking as we work on bringing up my slides and enabling me to share my screen and all that good stuff. So part of what I'm going to share today is a short set of slides, and then I'm going to actually walk you through the portal. Okay. Oh, wonderful. I have presenter control. I need to pull up my slides again. So I'm going to show a few short slides, but part of what I'm really going to focus on today is the portal itself. I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of how to use the portal. Most of you are probably familiar with the Climate Smart Communities portal, but it's fairly new. It was launched last April, and it has a lot of functionality, and there's parts of it that are available to the public, and then there's also what we call the dashboard. So for communities that have passed the pledge and are registered, they can set up a login and use the portal to submit an application for Climate Smart certification. Okay, so now I'm going to share my screen. Hopefully you all will be able to see my slides, and then we'll also switch over into a walk through the portal.
I think it's loading.
Okay. And we're having our internet connection here at the DEC seems a little slow today, so don't be surprised if you as viewers are not quite seeing this yet. Are you seeing my slides?
Not yet.
Okay.
It says we're going to be viewing them shortly, but.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, the screen is even just white on my end. It seems like it's working. Well, I'm going to keep talking because even if you can't see my slides, I can sort of talk through them, and we may just go straight to doing a walkthrough of the portal. So, yeah, it seems like it just.
I just made Willow a panelist, by the way.
Okay, that might be nice as a backup. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to try sharing once again. So one of the things that I was going to start with today was just a reminder to everyone that the Climate Smart Communities Certification Program is one component of the larger Climate Smart Communities Program. We also have grants. We also run webinars. And it looks like you all are not. Sharing seems like it's still not quite working. Is that true?
You know, if you want to present, hand the controls back to me, I can advance. Oh, there you go.
There we go. Hallelujah. All right. Thanks, everybody, for your patience. So I'm going to move through these slides pretty quickly because I've touched on a couple of them. So this was a slide that I wanted to sort of remind people that the Climate Smart Communities Program has other components besides the certification program, including those Climate Smart Communities grants and EV rebates as one example. And I wanted to do a quick reminder of, as an overview of the relationship between Climate Smart Communities Certification and Clean Energy Communities Program. As I mentioned before, the Climate Smart Communities Program is a broader program. It was actually started in 2009 and has been sort of building a set of resources to help local governments, and the certification program was launched in 2014. And the Climate Smart Communities Program is administered through the DEC, and as a DEC employee, it is pretty much 100% of what I do at this point. But it is an interagency initiative, so there are 6 different agencies that are behind the program and that help contribute to it. So Climate Smart Communities is a more comprehensive program from one view than Clean Energy Communities because it includes climate change adaptation, for example. And one of the main benefits of becoming a certified Climate Smart Community is if a municipality applies for a Climate Smart Communities grant, being a certified community improves your score on that grant application. So that's a difference from the Clean Energy Communities Program, where there's a very direct, you complete 4 of those Clean Energy Communities actions and you get a grant. The Climate Smart Communities Certification Program is more of a framework for engagement and a leadership recognition program than it is directly a grants funding, driven program. But the fundamental reality about the 2 programs is that they are complementary. They work really well together. And as one example of that, let me show you a crosswalk document that we have been working on. Okay, looks like it's going to take a minute to pull up. There it is, at least on my screen. Okay, I think you all are seeing it now. So this is a document that we call the crosswalk. It takes those 10 NYSERDA actions and right next to them lists the equivalent Climate Smart certification actions. So for those of you who are active in the Clean Energy Communities Program, you can take those actions and make them part of an application for Climate Smart certification. And the only one that in the near future we aren't expecting to have a direct equivalent is a community choice aggregation Clean Energy Communities action. That's an action that's under development. We're working together with NYSERDA to put that together, but we hope to release a final version of this document shortly so you can sort of see the short list of how the 2 programs relate to each other in a very direct, one-to-one action kind of way. All right, I am going to shift into doing a live tour of the portal, and then I'll close with a couple slides here, and also I'll come back to these slides, but let me shift over to the portal. So for those of you who are familiar with the portal, one of the most valuable things about it that you can get to through this homepage is you can go to the participating communities page. This shows the communities that have taken the pledge, or what we call registered communities. We have 250 of those right now in New York State. That's about 1/3 of the state's population. And it also has information about the certified communities. And the other thing I want to be clear about this page that's useful is you can filter the map by status of the community and also by action. For example, if you're looking for examples of communities that have done government building energy audits, you can click that, hit this filter, and then you'll get pins on the map for communities that have completed that action. You can open their certification reports and look for examples. The other thing that's a little buried on this page, let me close this up, is if you're just interested in communities in your county, you can also filter this map by your county. One of the things that's available on this page that is important for finding out information is if you click on one of these pins for the communities that are certified, you can view the report. And the value of these reports, I want to show you one that I've downloaded, the PDF, is that it has information of the actual documentation that communities have submitted in order to get certified. For example, if you want to look at how, I thought I had Tompkins County. I think this is Madison County. No, this is Tompkins County, sorry. So you can pull up their certification report and look at the actual documentation that they submitted in order to earn points. The one thing to be aware of with these certification reports is that they're good examples and they can give you a sense of how communities have gotten have made their way towards certification. But it is a good idea to look at the certification reports of communities that were certified recently. In this case, Tompkins County is a good example because they're a silver certified community, so they've completed a lot of actions. In this case, 44 actions, which is quite a lot. Most communities, just so you know, can get to the bronze level certification by completing somewhere in the range of 20 to 30 actions. But it's important to look at certification reports of communities that were certified recently, because these certification action requirements do change over time. So if you look at the certification report of a community that was certified recently, you'll be more able to get an example that meets the current set of requirements. Okay, so let me move now to what we call the Getting Started page. This is a really important page for communities who are interested in becoming certified and kind of getting a sense of where they are in the process. The first steps involve passing a resolution, becoming a registered community, and that's a requirement in order to be certified, and just getting set up in the portal. You'll notice across the top here that I'm already signed in, so this dashboard button already shows. You can set up an account by going to the sign-in page using your email, and that will get you access to your, you can work with your community to get access to their dashboard. So after your community has taken the pledge and you've registered, if you're interested in moving towards certification, that's the point at which you want to review and select actions. And the list of priority and mandatory actions on the page, on the portal, which you can see here, is a good place to start. Most of these actions are relatively low cost. They help form the foundation of a successful local climate action program. They involve building a strong team, completing some studies, doing things like greenhouse gas inventories. So the priority actions are a great place to start. So the other thing I just want to generally point out here is that once you get into the kind of this internal menu within the portal, there's lots of information here. If you open up some of these pages that can give information about the certification program. There are some questions I get that are very common. For example, you know, if your community collaborates with another community, can we get points? There's information about that here. So the other page I want to highlight is this actions page. So this is the publicly available actions page. This is where you can really see that list. We often say, you know, 100 or 120 actions. This is where you can see those actual actions in this list under the pledge elements. So if you open each of these pledge elements, you can open the actions. And this is where the real meat of the program is. And this is where you can access information about how to complete these actions, what you need to do if you're looking to earn points towards Climate Smart certification, and some good resources that are available. So one thing I want to draw a difference between is this kind of general publicly available actions page and the internal application page that's available inside the what we call the dashboard. So let me back out one level. So I'm logged in now as if I was a member of the Montgomery County government, and I'm working towards a government team. Doesn't necessarily have to be a staff employee, but they may have volunteers that are supporting them. And this is the view of what we call the dashboard. So you need to log in and be connected to your municipality in order to access this dashboard. This dashboard is a place where you can work on your certification application, but it's also a place where you can manage the other users who have access to the dashboard and change your publicly available information about your municipality. So I'm going to focus on this begin application functionality. So if I hit begin application, this is the internal view that is not available to the public, that is only available to people who are on the Montgomery County, in this case, their team. And this is a list of the actions that can be confusing for some, I have found, because it looks very similar to that publicly available page. So if I collapse all the pledge elements, or if I expand all these pledge elements and you can see all the actions, you can see how this looks somewhat similar to this publicly available page. And on this publicly available page, you can mark things as planned or unplanned, but it won't save because it's not part of an actual application. Whereas if you're logged in and you're using the dashboard, you can sort of see here, Montgomery County has marked some actions as planned, and there's some actions that they have previously submitted and received approved points for. So this application view is the place where you assemble your application. And the process of doing that is, for example, you might start by focusing on the mandatory and priority actions. So you can select these filters up here and it'll just show those. And in this case, again, for Montgomery County, you can see that they've marked some of these as planned, some of them have been approved. But let's say they were interested in doing a community greenhouse gas inventory. When you click on the name of the action, it opens up what we call the submission page. So this is a page where you really describe the information that you're submitting. There's a little box here for, as an applicant, saying exactly how you meet the requirements, and then you can actually upload documentation. So this is the way in which the dashboard acts like, kind of like Dropbox. It's a place to save documentation that's attached to each of these certification actions and saves them in here. So in this case, if I were Montgomery County, I might change this from plan to completed, and then I might go and browse on my local computer and grab the copy of my community's greenhouse gas inventory, and then I would hit save, and then that would become part of my application. And if you're ever in the submission page and you want to check the requirements for the action, this is a little bit small and easy to overlook, but the requirements for the action are right here, and that'll open this little window where you can sort of really say, all right, what exactly is this action require, and double check, oh yeah, my community inventory has been done within the last 5 years, I'm good to go. So let me go back to that application view and point out a couple things. So again, there are all these filters across the top that are really useful. And one of the things that's available here is there's this little calculator on the side that you can see the default is to tally up completed and approved actions. So for Montgomery County, they've got 63 already completed and approved points. And you can sort of see how that compares the certification criteria up here of 120 points at minimum for the bronze level. And if you ever want to look at a different view about those certification requirements, you can go, let me go to the Actions and Certification page. That'll open this menu on the side. And there's more information, a fuller description of the certification levels in the publicly available view of this website on this page too. So the other thing that I just want to point out that's very important within the certification portal is the application cycle. This is basically when we accept applications, when we review them. For example, right now we're in the midst of a review period, and I think we have 5 applicants, and we're going to let them know by this Friday. It's very exciting whether or not they've received certification. And for those of those communities that may not have achieved all of those requirements, they can simply reapply during the next round. So we do 3 review rounds each year. Okay, at this point, I'm going to hustle back to my slides and show you just a few closing slides. And I know I went through that quickly, but this webinar is being recorded, and you can sort of go back through if you need some orientation for how to get through the portal. Now, I'm conscious of our time, so I just want to mention that I've got 2 closing slides here about advice for applicants. We've been running this program since 2014, and the existence of the portal means that the process of applying is a lot easier, but there's still some basic pieces that it's really important for people to be aware of. Building your team is very, very important. I'm not going to go through the remaining of these bullets because of our time, but you will have copies of these slides after this webinar. Well, you know, the one thing I will mention, since we are hearing about CFA announcements, hopefully at the latest by the beginning of May, I do want to remind communities that they can apply for a Climate Smart Communities grant that can help them achieve certification by funding the completion of some certification actions. So, as I hinted at earlier, the Climate Smart Certification Program is an evolving program. The actions get revised periodically, and we're working on better ways of communicating sort of which version of the action that you're working with. The portal is the best place to look. Looking at the actual website has the current set of requirements. And this evolving process is a reflection of the fact that climate action in general is a fairly new program, and we included that as one of our pledge elements for the Climate Smart Communities program from the very beginning. And so this idea of engaging an evolving process and recognizing that engaging your whole community and working on this, it takes time, and it's an iterative process, and it kind of has an adaptive quality to it. So that's the way we are with this whole program. So I welcome any input and ideas from people who are participating or who are thinking about participating in the certification program. Let us know if you like the portal. Let us know if you hate it. Let us know if you have ideas about how to improve that. We're open to all that. And we are, over time, setting up more and more advisory groups and events to exchange that kind of those ideas and give feedback. So here's my information. You can always get a hold of our office at the climatesmart@dec.ny.gov email address. And again, you'll get copies of these slides. So thank you so much for your time. I'm going to shift sharing back over to Pat, and we're going to hear from Europa McGovern and Jim Yenger next, I believe, about the Climate Action Planning Institute.
Very Good. Thank you so much, Dazzle. All right.
Thank you.
Take a minute.
Well, hi, everyone. This is Europa McGovern of the Hudson Valley Regional Council. While Pat is pulling up my slides, I'll just give you a really brief introduction. So like I said, I'm a planner at the Hudson Valley Regional Council. I work with Carla Castillo. She introduced the Clean Energy Communities Program first thing on this webinar. And I just wanted to give you some more additional background on that and our role in the Climate Action Planning Institute. So Hudson Valley Regional Council is the regional administrator for the Clean Energy Communities Program. And on that first slide that's about to come up, our 7-county region will be circled on that map. There it is in the yellow circle. So this map is from NYSERDA's Clean Energy Communities Program webpage. So the number of participating communities is always going up. So this is about a week old, so it may have even changed since then. So the dots on the map represent the 526 communities statewide that have currently completed at least one of those 10 high-impact actions that Carla had outlined. And you can't see it now, but back when the Clean Energy Communities Program launched in 2016, the Mid-Hudson region emerged very quickly as a statewide leader. So the dots really were concentrated in our region early on. And so what that meant was that the 18 grants, the large $50,000 to $250,000 grants available to designated clean energy communities were very quickly exhausted. And so we at the Hudson Valley Regional Council basically developed the Climate Action Planning Institute as a way to continue to provide technical assistance and support to communities that are pursuing their various high-impact actions under the Clean Energy Communities Program, despite the fact that those larger grants were no longer available. So basically, the goal of the Climate Action Planning Institute is to focus on clean energy communities program actions, of course, and by default, many of these actions are climate smart communities actions as well. And again, it's a way to adaptively meet our community's needs and empower local climate action planning. Next slide. So this graphic, it just outlines the structure of the Climate Action Planning Institute. So basically, like I said, it's made possible via NYSERDA's Clean Energy Communities Program. So we at the Hudson Valley Regional Council teamed up with Climate Action Associates on this project. We're very lucky to have access to Climate Action Associates as a technical resource, thanks to their role as a fellow NYSERDA subcontractor via the Capital District Regional Planning Commission's Clean Energy Communities Program contract. Which Todd Fabosi had touched on earlier. Next slide. All right, so what is the Climate Action Planning Institute? So this graphic visual demonstrates it, that it's an 11-month-long working group. So we meet monthly, and we invited 8 communities that are listed here to join. So this graphic shows those 8 participating communities, most of whom are in Ulster County. And then we collaborated with Ulster County's Department of the Environment in the development of this project, and they were actually able to provide us with a venue for most of our monthly meetings, as well as other support. So just to reiterate that all of these communities were already actively engaged in various high-impact actions under the CEC program, and this was really a way for us to provide a level of support to them as a group, which we wouldn't have been able to, it would not have been able to do for them individually. Next slide. All right, so basically our goal for the 11-month-long Climate Action Planning Institute is to support these 8 communities in completion of their government operations, greenhouse gas emissions inventories, and to support their development of emissions reductions targets and development of their local climate action plans from these. And so just a quick note to clarify that we're focusing specifically on greenhouse gas emissions associated with government operations, from fleets, facilities, water delivery, wastewater treatment, et cetera, and not the much more extensive community greenhouse gas emissions associated with various sectors, which include residential, commercial, industrial, and transportation. So the 3 communities in green there you'll be hearing from in the municipal case studies portion of this webinar. So I just wanted to actually touch on the other 5 communities and some of the work they're doing. Next slide. So we'll start at the top there, the town and village of New Paltz. So they're actually both already designated clean energy communities. They both completed 4 or more high-impact actions each. They each received Block 3 NYSERDA grants via CEC Program of $5,000 each, and they're continuing to work on various initiatives, including working towards Climate Smart Community certification, and they also are working on a DEC Climate Smart Communities grant from 2017. And then I'm going to go clockwise over to the town of Saugerties. So they're also a designated clean energy community. They received another Block 3 $5,000 grant. They're actually also planning on applying for a Climate Smart Community certification this year via the July deadline. They also have a bid out for their energy audits for their large municipal buildings, and that's through NYSERDA's FlexTech program, which will fund 50% of those audits. And they're actually also getting more public EV charging stations installed, which I'm particularly excited about as a local EV driver myself. So that brings us over to the town of Rosendale. They're a designated clean energy community as well. They received a $50,000 CEC grant, and they'll be using those funds to purchase their street lighting system from the utility and then convert it to LEDs. And they're working on various community-wide initiatives as well. And then finally, that brings us back up to the town of Esopus. So actually, it says here that they've completed 3 clean energy communities program high-impact actions, but when I came in this morning, I saw that they had actually just submitted for their 4th action. So we're hoping they'll get approved soon by NYSERDA and that they'll be our newest designated clean energy community and also access one of those $5,000 grants. They also have a solar at their landfill, which offsets about 100% of their electricity usage at Town Hall. They also worked on a NYSERDA-funded Solarize campaign last year to encourage small-scale solar installations in the community. So I just wanted to reiterate that we brought together this group of communities, and we're working, they're all working on various initiatives, but we're bringing them together to work collaboratively, complete their government greenhouse gas emissions inventories, and then support completion of their climate action plans. Next slide. So the next steps, so we're basically 9 months into this 11-month-long working group. So we have 2 more meetings. We have a meeting in March and then a final report out meeting in April. So we're hoping to invite lots of local guests so they can hear from all of our participants about the work they're doing and the progress they've made. We're also planning on to continue to support all of the community's presentations to their own town boards, climate action coalitions, conservation advisory councils, whatever their local groups are. And that work has actually already started. And again, we can plan to continue supporting development of their local climate action plans, as well as various clean energy communities programs, actions, Climate Smart Community certification, and of course, many more initiatives and actions. We do hope that there will be many more rounds of the Climate Action Planning Institute. I know that we have quite a wait list essentially here in our Mid-Hudson region. So I would just encourage communities statewide that are interested to contact their local CEC program coordinators and see, if we can align funding in the coming years to launch, further rounds. Next slide. And with that, I just want to introduce our partner on this exciting project, Jim Yeanger of Climate Action Associates.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Europa. This is Jim Yeanger, principal of Climate Action Associates. We've been working with the Hudson Valley Regional Council and Capital District Regional Planning Commission for a number of years on climate action planning. I just wanted to give you some background on how we organize the CAPI program and why we've done it and why we think there's some advantages to working together. One of the rationales for this program, it is clear that there is a lot of interest in climate smart communities. We have seen this across the board over the last year. We are getting lots of calls about how to participate in this program. It's obviously very important. Climate is an issue that we all need to address. And we've been supporting communities for many years, and we realize as we're getting all of these calls, there's a lot of interest in, for example, in the Hudson Valley. It makes sense to start thinking of an economies of scale approach and facilitate a structured learning environment for all the participants, because we realize if you're going through climate smart communities, by yourself, you're probably missing an opportunity to learn from your peers. And this is a dynamic that we seek to introduce in this CAPI model. So what we have done is we, as Europa said, we invited all of the champions who are going to be the ones, and many of you listening to this call today are probably those people who will be driving climate action in your own community. We brought them together, invited them into a structured program where we could facilitate some of the concepts of climate action planning, from doing inventories to setting goals, how to develop policies, and use it as in a peer-to-peer approach. We introduce topics and then let this group of champions discuss the issues, discuss strategies moving forward. It's an empowering approach, and while on one hand, I think it kind of I guess complements DEC's new approach with their portal, in which they have I love the open data approach to being able to access other communities' information. Through this peer-to-peer approach, they can then work with that information and share amongst each other. So our approach to this has been very pragmatic. We've been working through greenhouse gas inventories and climate action plans and discussing them as a team. And you're going to hear from some of the communities shortly on this. And also, if you collaborate as a group, a local group, you can also work together on things like on policy, like LED street lighting and community choice aggregation and such. So I would encourage all of you, if you're listening and you are interested in climate smart communities or participating, that you consider organizing a network of your local peers in your region so you can also meet and start collaborating on the program. So the role for Europa and I in this as facilitators of this, and so our role has been really to provide structure and just finding venues and keeping a schedule, as Europa has said. And also a role I feel is very important for this kind of work is we act as a climate expert, but in a way to help you answer questions about the technical topics, but allow you and empower you to move forward on developing your policies and plans. So for a lot of you interested in climate, and a lot of, whether you're municipal staff or volunteers, you have a lot of expertise in your subject area. You might know fleets or heating and cooling, or you're interested in energy, but the concept of climate is pretty technical. For example, if you download the Local Government Operations Protocol, which some of you may have heard about, it's a 100+ page document with a bunch of equations and a bunch of fancy looking stuff. And so our role is really trying to help quickly get you through that, get you doing carbon accounting a simple way, keep you focused on the prize of developing your greenhouse gas mitigation strategies, and help you answer questions so you don't feel as though you need, a huge expert organization around you all the time. And then also we provided hands-on support through the process as we were going. So I'm just going to show you how we structured the meetings. They were monthly, and they are monthly, as Europa said. We started with an overview of climate action planning and of the program. And then we started talking, we did touch upon benchmarking, which was a clean energy communities high impact action, and its relationship to doing a greenhouse gas inventory. They're both good things to do together. And then we went right into the nuts and bolts of working as a group. We weren't talking about theory anymore. We started working. Participants went home with homework after each session to collect information and specific kinds of data, which then we could bring back and collectively discuss as a group. So we talked about strategies for efficiently organizing an inventory and how to present information and how to develop one so that the public who's going to be using the information would find it valuable. We stepped through a couple of meetings where we worked on inventories. Most of the participants have been developing and are now close to completing inventories. Then we moved to a series of meetings where we, as a group, we actually presented everyone's inventories and discussed them. And we had very interesting results. Everyone's inventory is different. We had communities with typical emission sources. We had one, and I think that we'll present, in which their entertainment center was the biggest source. And so you never know what you're going to find. But what's interesting is that as a group, we are able to discuss different strategies. So now, as we're moving towards the end, we're talking about climate action planning templates, how to organize your policies and align them to your baseline so that your public can understand the impacts of what you're doing. So one of the other benefits, if you collaborate with a network of peers in your area under climate smart communities, you can accomplish things that you can't necessarily do by yourself. So one example, in the Hudson Valley, because we had 9 participants, we collaborated in one of our first meetings to develop a joint letter of request to Central Hudson that was taken home and signed by the supervisors or chief executive officer of the community. we brought them back, organized them, conveyed them to Central Hudson, and then got a higher up level of support from the utility. And they ended up producing all of the data we needed in a single request. So for all communities, they got all the data in one spreadsheet. Now, this is obviously very helpful because you don't have to go chase bills. And then we were able to load this in a simplified greenhouse gas inventory tool that automated the process for everyone. So again, if you collaborate, you're going to get you have a lot more clout as a group. So that's just one example. Also, through the CAPI program, we develop tools and support resources. And one of the products that we've been kind of evolving over many years is something we call the Climate Smart Community Simple Greenhouse Gas Inventory Workbook. And it's a step-by-step spreadsheet. It focuses on the most important, the largest greenhouse gas inventory sources, and has some instructions on how to organize your data and how to think about it in a structured way. And then it has tabs to hold the utility data that you saw to automate calculations. And so some of the participants that you're going to be hearing from have used this. Here's an example. The tool has most of the common inventory graphs and charts and tables that you would find in a common climate action plan. All of these calculations are automated based on the data that's been put in the other tabs. And then finally, we have a section that we are working individually with each community, and we're starting to build these out. We call them climate action planning scorecards. A lot of communities do have questions when they're interested in climate action. If they do things like buy solar power or put a solar panel in, it's not 100% clear how you would account for that in a baseline and all of these very arcane technical questions about climate action plan. We help them through this process. Make it simple, do your baseline, and you can do a line item accounting of your actions and show very simply in a simple table how those are going to help you achieve a goal. So we try to make the process of climate action planning as simple as possible. So with that, I'm going to pass this on to Mark Varian of Gardner, and he's going to talk about Climate Smart Gardner. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I joined the Climate Smart Gardner Task Force when it was formed last year. Today I'll touch upon Gardner's involvement in clean energy communities as well as the Climate Smart communities, and I'll discuss our experience with the Climate Action Planning Institute. And I'll give you a little sample of our government operations greenhouse gas inventory. Next slide, please. In 2017, town resident Jason Mayer met with Europa, and along with the chair of the Gardner Environmental Conservation Commission, Roberta Clemens, gave a presentation on the clean energy and climate smart programs to our town board. In 2018, the town completed its first CEC action by having our building inspector attend NYSERDA's Energy Code Enforcement training. Also last year, the town adopted the Climate Smart Energies Pledge, and the community jumped right in. Jason set up a potluck event to get the community involved, had several people sign up for the task force, and then we went to work. We won a NYSERDA zero emissions vehicle grant for a charging station, which will soon be installed in the town's library property. And we began a process of converting our streetlights to LEDs. We also provided colorful new recycling containers to the town park. We joined the Climate Action Planning Institute, started our government operations greenhouse gas inventory, and our town's fleet inventory. Now, in 2019, we have already completed the greenhouse gas inventory and presented it to the town board. We hope to have a climate action plan complete by this summer. Perhaps the streetlight LED conversion plan will also get underway by then. And on March 16th, the task force is sponsoring a Go Green Expo that will feature solar and heat pump vendors, as well as some fun stuff for the kids, a CSA farm program, vegan cooking and wine tasting, and a bunch of other stuff. Of course, the high point of the event will be the introduction to the community of our greenhouse gas inventory. We'll ask our neighbors for input into our climate action plan. Next slide, please. Of course, we wouldn't have been able to get as far as we have in such a short time if we hadn't joined the CAP Institute. Many communities have applied for grants in order to fund consultants actually to put their spreadsheets together. Gardner is a town of 5,700 residents spread out over about 45 square miles and operates on a shoestring budget like most municipalities of its size. The CAPI provided us access to skilled professionals, Jim and Europa, who advocated for us to get 2 years' worth of Central Hudson data, like Jim mentioned, without us having to go through boxes of files to dig the information out. Jim, as he showed us, also put together an extensive spreadsheet capturing all the significant information each community would need for their inventories. Facilities master list, data collection for gas and electricity, tank and fleet fuels. The other members of the Institute, who represent many of our neighboring communities, also shared their means and methods of putting together their own inventories, and that was exceptionally helpful. Of course, there was still a little work that I had to do along with another member of our task force, Stephen Weir. We spent several mornings at Town Hall digging through 3 years of invoices for energy purchases. Although Central Hudson took care of 2 years of electric bills, we still had to account for tank fuels, heating oil, and gas. We also had to review all the Central Hudson data to make sure it was correct. And Europa was there all the time, attending a town board meeting even with me when I presented the inventory to the board a couple of weeks ago, and she helped answer important questions from the board members. Next slide, please. So this is the inventory, or at least a snippet of it. You'll notice on this slide, we show the average greenhouse gas emissions our facilities produce over a period of 3 years. Each of our 2 major buildings, the town hall, the highway garage, produce almost 25 tons of greenhouse gas emissions each year through their use of electricity and heating oil or propane. Our streetlights, which are the 3rd and 4th bars from the left, follow up in 3rd place. Our other facilities use electricity and propane as well, but not that much. Next slide, please. Now, when you add our fleet fuels, the 3rd bar from the left, you see where most of our emissions are produced. 67%, or 138 tons of greenhouse gas emissions, comes from our trucks, plows, and heavy equipment. We don't have a vehicle car fleet. Reimbursements of travel expenses for town officials using their own cars for town business is also included in this number. Slide, please. When you put the costs of all of our fuels on a graph, you see how much more we pay for electricity than for any of our direct fossil fuels. Gasoline accounts for the same amount of greenhouse gas emissions as does our electricity, but the gasoline expense is less than half that of electricity. And I must say the folks at the Institute were very impressed at the low prices the town actually paid for gasoline, diesel, propane, and heating oil. Next slide, please. The town over time has managed their energy use pretty well, and numbers have dropped a bit since 2015, although they edged up a little bit in 2017. It also should be said that the town has been working for years at keeping their greenhouse gas emissions under control and encouraging environmentally conscious development by installing a ground source heat pump in one section of Town Hall, passing a solar law, and completing a solar study at a capped landfill. Next slide. This final graph shows the electrical use and the cost of the electricity at Town Hall over 3 years, 2015 through 2017. Now, I was intrigued, as you may be, at how much electricity was used in the first few months of 2015. Well, it turns out both months, both January and February, as well as I think December in 2014, were very cold months, and we had a lot of snow. The ground source heat pump furnace at Town Hall is electric, and it has an electric coil backup for colder temperatures. So I think that explains a good portion of the increase in our electrical use. The heating oil at the highway garage, as well as gas and diesel use, were also pretty high those months. Next slide, please. So I think the task force has done quite a bit in less than a year. The town board has given us a great start with its total support and the efforts it had already undertaken, such as the solar law. But we have an awful lot on our plate for this year and years to come. I think we've gotten off to such a great start because of the invaluable assistance of the Climate Action Planning Institute. So thank you. Next slide.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you so much, and I'll stay on the line for questions. I'd now like to introduce Roberto Muller from Phillipstown.
Thank you, Mark. Hi everyone, my name is Roberto Muller, and I'm presenting today on behalf of the town of Phillipstown, a town of just under 10,000 residents in Putnam County, New York. I've been the Climate Smart Communities Coordinator for Phillipstown since January 2018, and will now give a brief summary of our involvement with the Clean Energy Communities Program, the Climate Smart Program, and also the Climate Action Planning Institute. So, quick summary, in the spring of 2017, our town began pursuing the following clean energy communities high impact actions, and I'll give also the estimated dates of submission or when we're hoping to complete them. Energy Code Enforcement Training, completed July 2018. Unified Solar Permit, submitted in February 2019. Energy Benchmarking for Government Buildings, planned for summer 2019. Community Choice Aggregation through our local Hudson Valley Community Power CCA, planned for summer 2019. Installation of public electric vehicle charging stations, summer or fall 2019. And Achieving Climate Smart Certification, planned for March 2021. So moving on to Climate Smart Communities. In July 2017, as part of the Clean Energy Communities Program, our town officially adopted the Climate Smart Pledge, and then in January 2018, hired me to coordinate the program with the goal of becoming certified in about 3 years. In 2018, we completed the following actions. We formed an internal government green team, formed a volunteer task force to serve as a steering committee to our town board on the Climate Smart Program, completed a government operations greenhouse gas emissions inventory thanks to the help from the Climate Action Planning Institute, which will be described in more detail below, began a community greenhouse gas emissions inventory in collaboration with a company called ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, for which we received a $9,670 Climate Smart Communities grant to complete the inventory, and we are scheduled to finish this in August 2019. We also received a $6,000 Climate Smart Communities matching grant to complete 11 low-cost certification actions, such as adopting a vehicle fleet efficiency policy, developing a natural resource inventory, and conducting a vulnerability assessment, all of which will be completed between March 2019 and March 2021. As for our government buildings, we received 3 bids to conduct ASHRAE Level 2 energy audits on all of our conditioned, i.e. heated or cooled government buildings through NYSERDA's FlexTech program, which will show us how to improve the energy efficiency of our buildings. But in light of New York's new strategic goals for net zero carbon buildings, we are also considering alternate paths through NYSERDA's commercial new construction and net zero energy for economic development programs. We also conducted a community survey to determine ideal locations to install the public EV charging stations that we're hoping to install sometime this year in Phillipstown. And lastly, we created a program website, climatesmartphillipstown.org. And as for our future plans for Climate Smart Phillipstown, I'll describe those following a summary of our involvement with the Climate Action Planning Institute. Next slide, please. So we joined CAPI in, sorry, I'm pausing for a sec because I didn't know the slide was in here. Yeah, can we skip this one? Just in the interest of time. There we go, great. So we joined CAPI in May 2018 along with 6 other Mid-Hudson Valley municipalities to access technical and logistical support in conducting our government operations inventory, as well as developing a climate action plan. The benefits of CAPI for us have been no grant applications or reporting requirements, access to resources including a incredibly valuable template inventory workbook, free technical assistance and guidance, access to bulk utility data from Central Hudson, which was incredibly helpful, and the opportunity to network with the other 6 communities as well as Ulster County. Challenges have included collecting government energy use data, since in Phillipstown most of our records are only kept as printed vouchers and are not digitally recorded, adding to the amount of time involved in accessing the data. Also, capacity for technical support. Jim and Europa have been a great resource, but as they are working regionally with communities on many Clean Energy Communities program related projects, they do not have sufficient time to dedicate to CAPI and generally cannot offer much individual technical support beyond monthly meetings and completion of our government operations inventory. And then for completion of the government inventory itself, we drafted a facility master list, then built out that list to include all of our energy provider accounts, and then collected the energy data, including tank fuels, fleet fuels, our employee commute survey, and also gas and electric data from Central Hudson. And then the most amazing part of the whole process was Jim and Europa helped clean up the data, and Jim was able to work his Excel magic and do the greenhouse gas emissions calculations and demonstrate the results via a series of tables, charts, and graphs, of which I'll show some examples in the next slides. Next slide, please. So you can see here a huge spike on the left, which is our recreation center. These are emissions based on facilities, so not including our vehicle fleet, and all data is for the year 2016. Our recreation center is a big culprit because it's over 20,000 square feet, but also because it is an old, uninsulated, and highly inefficient building. Our highway garage, town hall, and community theater are also good candidates for eventual energy efficiency upgrades. Next slide, please. Our emissions by function, including employee commute as scope 3 emissions, which you can see in the little yellow box. Our vehicle fleet produces the most emissions, but our government buildings are also not far behind. Next slide, please. Here is a breakdown of our emissions by energy type as well as cost per energy type. You can see that despite the amounts of emissions varying depending on the energy type, the total energy cost below is essentially the same for electricity, heating oil, diesel, and gasoline. Next slide, please. And here are more details on the cost comparison of emissions types, highlighting the difference in cost per metric ton of carbon dioxide equivalent emissions between electricity and heating oil, which I will describe below. Next slide, please. So, all greenhouse gas inventories tell a story. Based on our data, where do we focus our emissions reductions? Our rec center has high emissions compared to other government buildings. Our fleet emissions are high. We primarily use fuel oil for heating our government buildings, producing emissions that more than double that of our electricity use. And yet, just like Mark mentioned about Gardner, we pay half as much for our oil, which unfortunately favors high greenhouse gas emissions. Also, because electricity right now is only 13% of our emissions, currently there is only a small benefit to converting our electricity to 100% renewables. That said, we must reduce our emissions, so our plan is the following. Since we only have one sedan in our vehicle fleet and the rest are large trucks for our highway department, we will work to replace the sedan with an EV and then replace our inefficient highway vehicles when equivalent and cost-effective hybrid or EV trucks become available. We will also encourage employees to use public transportation, carpooling, and non-motorized transportation. But our main efforts for now will have to focus on renovating each of our conditioned buildings to eventually reaching what we think as net zero carbon to try to align ourselves with NYSERDA's strategic goals. starting with the rec center and then moving on from there. Essentially, we'll have to increase the energy efficiency through insulation and air sealing, but also convert our heating systems away from oil to electricity through installation of air source heat pumps and ground source heat pumps. Luckily, we're about to begin a community choice aggregation program, which will help us purchase renewable electricity for a lower price. Next slide, please. Our next steps are to present our findings to our government board about our government operations inventory in early March, after which we'll set our emissions reduction targets, keep plugging away on our community inventory and also the certification actions that I mentioned above, develop our climate action plans for government operations in our community, and of course the big push, renovate our buildings, when possible update our fleet, and continue to encourage and incentivize our government employees to reduce their commuting emissions. Next slide, please. Thank you very much. I will stay on for the Q&A at the end of this webinar. And next up, we have Julie Noble presenting for the City of Kingston.
Thank you so much, Roberto. So thank you, everyone. My name is Julie Noble. I'm the Sustainability Coordinator for the City of Kingston. And like Roberto and Mark, I will be going through our Clean Energy Communities Program and Climate Smart Communities Program and CAPI experiences. Next slide, please. So this is a timeline of where we have come from in terms of our sustainability efforts and our climate initiatives. We've been fortunate that since 2007, we've had one and then in the following year, 2 full-time employees working for the municipality in the realm of sustainability and climate. I will just mention that the City of Kingston is a community of 23,000 people, and we're 90 miles north of New York City on the Hudson River in the Hudson Valley. So 2 full-time environmental educators working diligently on climate initiatives. We formed a Conservation Advisory Council and Climate Smart Communities committee early on and did our first greenhouse gas emissions inventory and climate action plan in 2011-2012 based on 2010 data. So we are different and unique from the other communities in CAPI, and I'll mention this later, in that at this point we are actually updating our greenhouse gas emissions and going on our second round, an update to our climate action plan. We were able to execute a large section of what we saw as a gap in our climate action plan as a second round of an adaptation evaluation. So we put together a document called Planning for Rising Waters, a study of how to make sure we are resilient on our waterfront and looking to sea level rise and how we can be protected but resilient on our waterfront, which we are surrounded by water on 3 sides here in Kingston. We were in the first cohort of communities to become certified, and at the time we were certified as bronze, which was the highest level at the time that was achieved, and now are silver certified, which we became in 2018, and were designated the first clean energy community in 2016. I was one of those original environmental educators. I am now the sustainability coordinator, and I have 2 staff working for me, so we have a department of 3 working on these initiatives. Next step, please. So I just want to go through some of, touching on what Carla had originally outlined with our Clean Energy Communities impact actions. Our original actions that we completed were benchmarking our buildings. We participated in Energize New York finance mechanism. We have completed a Solarize Kingston campaign, and we adopted the Unified Solar Permit. As Europa mentioned in the beginning, we were one of those first communities in the Hudson Valley to have completed our actions and were then eligible for, based on our size, $100,000 from NYSERDA. And we are deep in the process now of using that money to retrofit our City Hall, which is a historic building, with storm windows and LED lighting that will greatly improve our loss of energy and greatly save us lots of money in the long run for that building. Since that time of us having our certification through Clean Energy Communities, we've also moved towards an alternative fuel fleet. We have about 160 vehicles total in our fleet, and about 7 of them at this time are now alternative fuels. You'll see in this picture here, one of our police vehicles is a hybrid, and we have also electric vehicle charging stations around town. And we are also now, today is the last day that we will be retrofitting our 11 of our municipal buildings for LED. So we've had a month-long process of retrofitting those buildings, and by this summer we will have converted all of our street lights, which is about 2,200 street lights, to LED. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we are a Silver Certified Climate Smart Community. This slide was my way of trying to represent and relay to all of you how many things we're working on and how we tend to categorize them within our municipality. You'll notice that our mindset and our lens for what we do here, you know, we don't sit and talk about a lot of global warming and climate change and saving the earth, but we look towards how to maintain a vibrant and healthy economy. And we do that through energy, transportation, land use, sustainable resource management, adaptation and resilience, and outreach and education. And so you can just see with each of these different sectors, we have been able to primarily through grant funding fund each of these projects and programs that you see here. We've received funding through the Department of Environmental Conservation's Hudson River Estuary Program, the Climate Smart Communities Program, the Municipal Waste Reduction and Recycling Program, Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. We've gotten funding through National League of Cities, through the NYSERDA, and many others. So we have projects that are completed and we have projects that are ongoing. And the key to all this is that it spans all the different departments. So our Department of Sustainability doesn't do all this work alone at this time. We now work with our planning department, engineering, DPW, all the departments to make sure that we are weaving sustainability through each of our efforts. And so each of these efforts that you see here, most of these are completed and the rest of them are underway. Next slide, please. We have been lucky to participate in the CAPI, Climate Action Planning Institute of this round. I will echo what Roberto and Mark have said about the benefits and the challenges. Certainly it is very much accessible, having a monthly meeting and having the comprehensive actions of bringing everyone together and building on what we have. As I mentioned before, we are updating our greenhouse gas emissions inventory as opposed to starting fresh, and we are updating our climate action plan as opposed to starting fresh. So we're able to serve a role within CAPI to both to collaborate with and network with other communities and to provide them best practices in what we've done, but also glean information from them as well as to how we can progress more effectively. In terms of resources and technical assistance, again, the emissions accounting has been incredibly helpful, and for us in particular, the access to the utility data has been really crucial. We have 152 different utility accounts within the city, and those accounts are spread amongst different departments, and that is an incredibly unwieldy amount of data. So having this access to the bulk data has been extremely important for us. Next slide, please. As you saw with Roberto and Mark, you'll notice here that we have the information about our facilities' greenhouse gas emissions. I will notice, and I didn't know this before, but I tried to take calculation here. Not that it's a comparison, but just as a note, to my understanding, Gardner has about 5,000 people, Phillipstown has about 10,000 people, we have about 23,000 people. And when looking at and comparing our emissions, just to give people an idea, because there are people on the phone today from all over New York State, from communities and municipalities of all different sizes, our emissions total are 10 times that of Gardner and 4 to 5 times that of Phillipstown. So just as a comparison. What we're looking at here, though, is you can see from the left side here that in terms of tons of greenhouse gas emissions from facilities alone, so this is just facilities, wastewater treatment plant and street lights and signals are by far the highest. This is based on 2017 data, which is the last complete year that we have. And so with our wastewater treatment plant, we're looking at electricity use, natural gas and other fuel use, methane, nitrous oxide emissions, and our streetlights, of course, are the electricity. Next slide, please. I want to just touch on the streetlights and signals. So as I mentioned before, well, as I just mentioned, you saw that streetlights and signals are our top facility greenhouse gas emissions source and also our highest cost. So just looking at economics here, in 2017, you can see how much we spent per month on streetlights and signals. And just to give you an idea again how much these are, we have about 2,200 streetlights and 45 signals. These numbers also include Christmas lights around town, on municipal property, park lighting. And so it's an incredible amount of money. And what we're able to do, a big change to this is what we're undergoing as we speak. As I said, we are retrofitting all of our streetlights to LED, so we are deep in the design process. I will say that that is a $2.2 million process that included purchasing our lights, auditing, designing, and retrofitting, and will be complete by the end of this year. Next slide, please. Here we are looking at the emissions by function, as we did with the other towns as well. Similarly, you'll see our vehicle fleet. Again, we have 160 vehicles. That is clearly our highest emissions by function. In terms of just broken down here, if we actually combine our facilities together, wastewater facilities, administration facilities, buildings and facilities combined are truly the highest. But breaking it down a little bit here, you see how that all works out by function. Next slide, please. Again, by energy type, electricity, of all the energies that we use within the city, electricity produces the most greenhouse gas emissions. If we were to switch over to solar for that, for our electricity, you can see how much energy we would save. The graph on the bottom here, again, depicts to you just percentage-wise how much comes from electricity, and really this one here is only really demonstrating to us our delivery. It doesn't even include our supply costs. Next slide, please. Similar to what we've seen in the other communities, we can see what's happening in our city hall. So on the top, you can see this is our electricity use in city hall with our kilowatt hours on the left and costs on the right. And generally what we're looking at is 2016 and 2017. Basically 20,000 kilowatt hours per month of electricity in our city hall, which is about $1,000 a month. With our retrofit of our LED lights through our $100,000 grant, we'll be able to reduce that to 14,000 kilowatt hours per month. On the bottom, you'll notice the natural gas costs and usage. This is normalized over the course of the year. As you can see the fluctuation, this is only our heating. And so at this time, we're using about 1,100 therms on average, which goes up to maybe 3,000 per month in the winter. And with our installation of our new windows, we're going to be able to bring that down, save 2,700 therms per year. So we'll save about 225 therms per month. It's not a huge quick payback, but it is certainly from a usage perspective, and for those folks that work in City Hall and have breezy desks, it will be very effective. Next slide, please. So our next steps, we have to gather and chart our final 2018 data now that we have completed 2018, so we can finalize that part of our updated greenhouse gas emissions inventory, present this to our Climate Smart Kingston Commission, and then move towards a Climate Action Plan update. So outlining the progress towards our emissions reduction targets that we originally set, which were set for as our baseline of 2010 data with goals for 2020. Establishing new implementation plans. So since then, what has changed? How are we going to move towards those new plans and setting new targets and goals? With the Climate Smart Community Program, we're constantly looking for more grant funding to complete new projects, and we will have to go through the recertification process, which Dazzle didn't necessarily touch on, but communities that are certified have to become recertified after a certain period of time. And we are always constantly sharing our best practices with other municipalities, and I'm happy to continue to do so with others. Next slide, please. This is my contact information. Everything that we've done and that we are working on within the city is all found in one place on our website, kingston-ny.gov/sustainability, and I'd be happy to speak with any community about how we got here and how you can do it too. So thanks, and back to Pat for questions and answers.
Thank you so much, Julie, and to all the municipal speakers. That was just terrific. We do have questions. I'm going to take my screen off sharing so I can go into my email, but here's the first one. Otsego County has 4 full-time planners serving 34 municipalities with limited access to organizations like CAPI. How can low-capacity communities access technical assistance for climate-smart communities-related projects? Is Dazzle with us?
Yes, I am. Thanks, Pat. So
Sure.
I think there's sort of 3 things that come to mind for me in answering this question. Number one, it is true that there are a lot of small local governments in New York State that have trouble participating in the Climate Smart certification program because it is fairly energy intensive. It takes sort of completing projects that either reduce emissions or build a community's resiliency, and then documenting them and then submitting them via the portal. And, there's a lot of pieces to it, and it does take a fair amount of work. Those are the communities that I also like to highlight the fact that the Climate Smart certification framework and that list of actions is just a resource in and of itself. So there may be some communities that have no interest or just feel like they could never achieve Climate Smart certification. Some of them, I think, with help certainly could, but I think that there's value in just having the information out there so that communities can look at it and it can inform their efforts even if they aren't directly achieving certification. Number 2, your regional NYSERDA-funded Clean Energy Communities coordinators can help you with Climate Smart actions. There's that list of 10 actions that the NYSERDA-funded regional coordinators focus on, and one of those 10 is Climate Smart certification. So they can offer some help with completing Climate Smart actions. And then the third way of answering this question is that DEC is currently working on a proposal to use some funds from the Environmental Protection Fund to support regional coordinators across the state. It's not finalized, but it's in the works, and it's something that we've been trying to develop, and I can't offer details on it, and it's not final yet, but that is something that we recognize, that municipalities can use help from a regional coordinator who knows state programs well and who can kind of act as kind of a circuit rider, move around municipalities and help with this kind of work, and maybe also support the replication of the CAPI, of the Climate Action Planning Institute, in other areas of the state. The other thing that I'll mention that this question has embedded in it is a recognition that sometimes the county governments can help the local municipalities because sometimes they do have planners and things like GIS capacity that the municipalities just don't. So I also encourage municipalities to go to their counties and see if they could work on a regional level. And Ulster County is a great example of a county, Tompkins County to some extent too. These are county governments that have consciously formed Climate Smart communities committees to kind of foster the exchange of ideas and develop a cohort of people who are working in the program and wanting to work on a regional level and get help from their county government to do plans or work together to complete some of the Climate Smart certification actions. That's another way to go about this too. Does anybody else want to add to that?
Yeah, this is Todd, and I'll just say that you can contact the Mohawk Valley Economic Development District and Amy Wyatt, who's the outreach coordinator for your area.
Okay, Dazzle, you kindly answered 3 questions that appeared on chat, but we are recording, so I'm going to read them to you again, and you can provide your answer. Are you going to provide a link to the documents like the crosswalk?
Yes. As soon as we have that crosswalk document finalized, there's a little more work we need to do to sort of get those actions actually posted into the website. But once we have that crosswalk document finalized, it will be posted to climatesmart.ny.gov, the Climate Smart Communities portal. And also, I'll be sure that all of the regional clean energy communities coordinators have copies of the document as well. Be aware that in the short term, your regional coordinators are aware of those crosswalk actions, of where communities that are active in NYSERDA's Clean Energy Communities Program can get points towards Climate Smart certification. They can point you to the kind of equivalent actions, and they also have a copy of a draft version of that crosswalk. So the information is available in the short term too before the final version is up on the website.
Next up, do communities have to wait until they have enough points for certification to submit, or can they submit what they have so far for each submission deadline?
They do need to complete what we call a complete application. I will say, as a point of clarification, for the first 4 years of the Climate Smart Certification Program, we did award points on a rolling basis. That became kind of untenable as the amount of interest increased in the program, and just as we realized we needed more structure in the program. And also there's a value in having these defined review periods where communities know when they'll hear back from the review team about whether they've earned points or not. So we sort of shifted to this more structured process, which means that if a community is working in the dashboard online in the portal, they need to do, in the range of 20 to 30 actions, upload the documentation for those actions, mark them as completed, and through that process, an applicant will notice in the dashboard on the right-hand side, there's that little calculator that records kind of how many actions they've completed. There is a button beneath that little calculator that will actually light up when they've met the basic requirements. Otherwise, that button, the Submit Application button, will be grayed out and not available. So a community must complete, in that range of 20 to 30 actions and meet at least the bronze level requirements in order to submit an application and then get those actions reviewed and evaluated for points by the review team.
Great. Does a community have to have reached bronze certification or any other Climate Smart Communities certification to be eligible for DEC grants for charging stations?
No, they do not. All levels of local government in New York State, so cities, towns, villages, and county governments, can apply for DEC's electric vehicle rebates and rebates for electric vehicle infrastructure, as well as the Climate Smart Communities grants. None of the DEC's, these community climate-related grants, none of the DEC's grants require a municipality to either have taken the pledge, the Climate Smart Communities pledge, in other words, to be a certified or a registered community, or a certified community. All types of local governments are eligible for both of these programs. I will say that communities that are participating in the Climate Smart Communities program, either they've taken the pledge or they've become certified, their applications for Climate Smart grants will score better. They'll receive a higher score under the competitive scoring criteria, but they are still eligible to apply. And we have awarded many ZEV rebates and Climate Smart Communities grants to municipalities that are not registered and that have no history of participating in the program. It's part of, honestly, the value of the grants is they can kind of give these communities that don't have a lot of resources and may be struggling to complete some actions, but they have the resources to provide a 50% match. These grants and ZEV rebates can help them complete an action with a little bit of funding from the DEC.
Thank you. If a community is doing a climate action plan, would you get multiple points for incorporating a vulnerability assessment and a greenhouse gas inventory?
Yes, they wouldn't have to be sort of part of the same document, but the Climate Smart Certification Program, like I said, has over 100 actions, and the way that the certification program is set up is that there are separate actions for greenhouse gas inventories, for climate action plans, for climate vulnerability assessments, and for, that's all the things that were mentioned, yeah. So those documents could be separate, they could be put together, but the more actions that are completed that meet those requirements of the Climate Smart Certification actions, there are more points available.
And what greenhouse gas inventory tools does DEC recommend, and which tools did the CAP group use?
So I can answer the first part of that. DEC at this point in time is sort of looking at evaluating different greenhouse gas inventory tools and looking at possibly doing a revision and developing a tool that is customized to the Climate Smart Community Certification Program. Back in, I think it was 2011, 2012 maybe, there was a government operations greenhouse gas inventory tool that was branded under Climate Smart Communities, but it's a bit outdated, so we don't recommend it being used anymore. It just includes some emission factors and things that are a little bit old. It's still somewhat functional, but we don't recommend that communities use it. The tools that we recommend using in this kind of interim period of time are actually the US EPA tools, the federal tools. So if you go to the US EPA site and you search for local greenhouse gas inventory tools, they have a spreadsheet-based tool which is basically the same as the old tool that was branded for Climate Smart, but it's been updated. It's a very limited tool. It really does literally just focus on greenhouse gas emissions. It doesn't include valuable information like the cost of energy for a government operations inventory. That's particularly useful and valuable and provides some sort of context for decision making. But those tools are readily available and free, so we do recommend that communities use them. For those communities that are looking for, more information, or or they have maybe they're a larger municipality that has a more sophisticated interest in doing forecasting and things like that, the ICLEI for local governments tools, that is the ClearPath tool, that's what it's called. The ICLEI's ClearPath tool is available and is a high quality tool. It is fee-based, however, so depending on the size of your municipality, a community would need to pay a fee to access that online-based tool. But those are the two tools, sources of tools that come to mind. Jim Yeager might have some good perspective on this as well. Jim, you want to answer this question about GHG tools?
And Jim, there's an addendum. Can the inventory and workbook be shared?
Thank you, Dazzle. So we've been working on the greenhouse gas inventory tool issue for quite a while. So under Climate Smart Communities, with support from Climate Smart Communities and Clean Energy Communities, we have been developing a simple greenhouse gas inventory template that some of the communities discussed today. And every time we work, and it covers most of the common greenhouse gas sources. There's a few things that can be added if you have, ice rinks and a few other kinds of facilities that aren't as common. But anyway, those tools are available free of charge. We produce them every time we work on it. We make them a little bit better. So those are, we pass them out to anyone who asks. So if anyone's interested, we can make available all the templates that we've been using in CAPI and some other things that we have. And so we just feel free to use them and customize them if you need to.
And Jim, can you clarify the main tool that you're describing is for government operations, correct? Are there tools that you recommend for community level inventories? I think the ICLEI tool is one option. I think I'm trying to think of another one offhand. There's some guidance for regional greenhouse gas inventories that are available that have been done to help communities do inventories. In terms of spreadsheet tools, I can't think of something offhand. We're planning on adding a module to this simple tool now that the utility energy registry in New York State is up and running. So all the data for communities is already available from utilities. So I don't have one I can recommend offhand, but I suspect we'll be able to add one to the simple tool fairly soon with the new data that's coming. Wonderful. The other thing that I'll add is that an answer to this question will always be available on the climatesmart.ny.gov website, the Climate Smart Communities portal. If you go to the actions page and select government operations, greenhouse gas inventory, or the community inventory under Pledge Element 2, that's a place where if we get new information or we have new tools to be available, that's a great thing about this new website-based system. As opposed to the old, prior to 2018, we had a PDF of the Climate Smart Community Certification Actions, which was very static and basically impossible to update on a kind of periodic basis. So now that we have the Climate Smart Communities portal, we do our best to update periodically the tools and the information and make, guidance available around things like greenhouse gas inventory. So communities can always go to that actions page of the Climate Smart Communities portal and get good information about resources and tools that help complete the actions.
All right, I think that takes us through the questions, and we will be sending out the slides. We'll be sending out the recording, and then bios and, of course, the agenda. Let's just see. I thought there was one more question that came in.
Yeah, Pat, no. This is Dazzle. The other thing I'm noticing, it seems like a couple people sort of have acknowledged the fact that the Climate Action Planning Institute is available in the Mid-Hudson area, but not available elsewhere. So I think that it's clearly a great model, and as I mentioned, the DEC is considering our options for trying to provide support for replicating the model elsewhere in the state. And I hope that NYSERDA will also continue to support this kind of a model being available in other regions. But we don't have any sort of immediate plans for replicating the CAPI model. But I think that other regions should also recognize that its potential, for example, to apply for a Climate Smart Communities grant to support something like a Climate Action Planning Institute. We would love to see sort of some regional coordination, maybe a couple counties getting together to organize this kind of effort in their region, and providing some of the funding, or, donating a space where they could actually meet. I think that we're looking at options for a way to replicate this model, because it does seem like it's been effective in areas where, for example, there's a good base of volunteers who can commit to meeting in the evenings once a month. So those are some of the thoughts that I've had here at the DEC about replicating this model. Does, I don't know, Europa or others want to talk about sort of the potential for replicating the CAPI model in the future in other areas?
This is Todd. I'll just mention quickly that the model could be applied throughout our whole territory right now. Climate Action Associates is a subcontractor to the whole eastern upstate New York territory. However, we are coming to the end of a funding cycle in which we may not be able to start something up until there's a new round of funding or a new program announced. But again, then in the other parts of the state, it's a model that we can share how we've done it, and then communities would have to develop it amongst themselves, or with the support of the Central New York Regional Planning and Economic Development Board, who manages the western part of the state.
This is Carla. I would have to agree that there is, as Europa had mentioned earlier, that there is a significant amount of interest in the Mid-Hudson to replicate this model in other counties. And we look forward to having that opportunity in the future and filling that need.
Terrific, everyone. Well, thank you all so much. We stayed relatively on time, but great turnout, and we will be offering another webinar next quarter. And meanwhile, we'll send out everything from today. Thank you so much. Bye now.